I never thought I would be the kind of mother-in-law people complain about. You know the type. The one who shows up unannounced, criticizes everything, and thinks nobody can take care of her precious son the way she did. That was never going to be me. I promised myself that when Marcus got married, I would be supportive, respectful, and keep my distance when needed. I would be the cool mother-in-law, the one who baked cookies but knew when to leave, the one who offered help but never imposed. But life has a way of showing you who you really are when the stakes get high enough. My name is Patricia, and I am 58 years old. I raised Marcus on my own after his father walked out when he was just 6. Those were hard years. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, to make sure he had what he needed. Not just food and clothes, but music lessons, sports equipment, college applications. I wanted him to have opportunities I never had. I wanted him to know he was loved, even though his father chose not to stick around. Marcus grew up to be everything I hoped. Kind, responsible, successful. He became an architect, married a lovely woman named Jennifer, and they bought a house in the suburbs with a yard and a white picket fence. The American dream, right there in living color. And when they told me they were expecting a baby, I cried for 2 hours straight. Happy tears mostly, but also tears of relief. My son was going to have the family I always wanted him to have. Little Olivia was born on a Tuesday morning in March. 7 pounds, 3 ounces, perfect in every way. I was at the hospital within an hour, holding that tiny bundle and feeling my heart expand in ways I did not know were possible. Being a grandmother, I realized, was different from being a mother. The love was just as fierce, but without the constant worry that came with full responsibility. I could enjoy her completely. Jennifer seemed happy to have me there those first few weeks. She was exhausted, overwhelmed, trying to figure out breastfeeding and diaper changes, and why Olivia cried at 3 in the morning every single night. Marcus was back at work after 2 weeks, so I started coming over more often. I would hold Olivia while Jennifer took a shower. I would do their laundry, make casseroles, clean the kitchen. I thought I was helping. I thought I was being useful. Then one afternoon, everything changed. I had let myself in with the spare key they gave me. Jennifer was upstairs putting Olivia down for a nap, and I thought I would surprise them by organizing the nursery. The place was a disaster. Clothes everywhere, diapers scattered, bottles in various states of cleanliness. So I got to work. I folded the onesies, arranged them by size, put the toys in bins, cleaned and sterilized all the bottles. When Jennifer came downstairs, she looked around with this strange expression on her face. Jennifer said, "Patricia, what did you do?" I smiled, proud of myself. I said, "I organized everything. It was such a mess up there. Now you will be able to find what you need." She did not smile back. Jennifer said, "I had a system. I knew where everything was." I tried to laugh it off. I said, "Sweetheart, it was not a system. It was chaos. But now you have a real system. Trust me. It will make your life so much easier." Jennifer crossed her arms. She said, "I did not ask you to do that." I felt the first prickle of defensiveness. I said, "I know. I wanted to help. You are exhausted, and I thought if the house was more organized, you would feel less stressed." Jennifer said, "I feel more stressed now because I do not know where anything is." I laughed again, but it sounded forced even to my own ears. I said, "You will figure it out. It is better this way, I promise." That was the moment I should have apologized. I should have recognized that I had overstepped, that I had imposed my own preferences onto her space without asking. But I did not. Instead, I kept insisting that what I did was helpful, that she would thank me once she got used to the new system. Jennifer just walked away. Over the next few weeks, I kept coming over. I kept helping in the ways I thought were best. I would arrive when Jennifer was feeding Olivia and suggest different positions. I would watch her change a diaper and offer tips about preventing rash. I would listen to her talk about her struggles with sleep training and tell her what I did with Marcus, what worked, what did not. I thought I was sharing wisdom. She thought I was criticizing. One day, I walked in to find Jennifer giving Olivia a bottle. I said, "Oh, I thought you were breastfeeding." Jennifer looked tired. She said, "I am. But I pump too, so Marcus can help with feedings." I nodded, but I could not help myself. I said, "You know, breast is best. The connection you get from direct feeding is so important for bonding." Jennifer said, Olivia and I are bonding just fine. I said, of course, of course. I am just saying, if you can do it, you should. I nursed Marcus until he was almost 2 years old. Jennifer set the bottle down. She said, Patricia, I am doing the best I can. I said, I know, honey. I am just trying to help. Jennifer said, it does not feel like help. That stung. I said, what does that mean? Jennifer said, it feels like you are telling me I am doing everything wrong. I said, that is not true at all. I just want what is best for Olivia. Jennifer said, so do I. She is my daughter. I said, she is also my granddaughter. We stared at each other. The air between us felt heavy, thick with unspoken tension. Finally, Jennifer picked up the bottle again and turned away from me. I stood there for a moment, unsure what to do, then quietly left the room. I told myself she was just hormonal. New mothers were always sensitive, emotional, reading into things that were not there. She would calm down eventually. We would laugh about this someday. But things got worse. I started noticing that Jennifer would tense up when I walked into a room. She would cut conversations short, find excuses to take Olivia upstairs, avoid eye contact. Marcus, caught in the middle, tried to smooth things over. He would tell me Jennifer was just adjusting, that it was hard for her, that I should give her space. But he also asked me to keep coming by, to keep helping, because they really did need the support. So I kept going, I kept helping, and I kept giving advice. The breaking point came gradually, in small moments that accumulated like drops of water filling a bucket. Each incident seemed minor on its own, but together they created an ocean of resentment between us. There was the time I suggested Jennifer try a different brand of diapers because the ones she was using seemed to leak. Jennifer said, these work fine for us. I said, but I noticed Olivia's clothes were wet this morning. Maybe if you tried the ones I used with Marcus. Jennifer said, Patricia, I will handle it. I said, I am just trying to save you some laundry. Jennifer did not respond. She just walked away, holding Olivia a little tighter than before. There was the afternoon I found Jennifer trying to get Olivia to take a pacifier. The baby kept spitting it out, and Jennifer was getting frustrated. I said, you know, Marcus never took a pacifier. I found that if I just held him more, he did not need one. Jennifer said, well, Olivia is not Marcus. I said, I know that. I am just saying there are other ways to soothe a baby. Jennifer said, I am trying to find what works for us. I said, but that clearly is not working. Jennifer looked at me with exhausted eyes. She said, Patricia, please, not now. But I could not stop myself. I said, I am just worried about Olivia developing a dependency on artificial soothing. Natural comfort is so much better for babies. Jennifer put the pacifier down and took a deep breath. She said, I need you to leave. I said, what? Jennifer said, I need you to leave right now. I cannot do this anymore. I felt like I had been slapped. I said, Jennifer, I was just trying to help. Jennifer said, I know. But your help is making everything harder. Please just go. I stood there frozen, holding my purse and feeling the world tilt beneath my feet. Then I turned and walked out without another word. I got in my car and sat in their driveway for 10 minutes, crying so hard I could barely see. How had it come to this? How had I gone from being a helpful grandmother to someone who was asked to leave? I called my best friend Carol that night. Carol had been my rock through everything. The divorce, raising Marcus alone, all the lonely years. She listened as I poured out the whole story, interrupted only by my sobs. Carol said, Honey, I am going to tell you something you do not want to hear. I said, what? Carol said, you need to back off. Jennifer is right. I said, but I am just trying to help her. She is struggling and I have experience. Carol said, Patricia, do you remember when Marcus was a baby and your mother-in-law kept telling you that you were doing everything wrong? I went quiet. I did remember. My ex-husband's mother had been a nightmare. She criticized my parenting constantly, made me feel incompetent, and created so much tension that it contributed to the breakdown of my marriage. Carol said, you swore you would never be like her. But honey, you are doing the exact same thing. I said, that is not true. I am nothing like her. Carol said, are you sure? Because from what you are telling me, Jennifer feels exactly the way you felt back then. Those words hit me like a truck. I sat there in silence, the phone pressed to my ear, replaying every interaction I had had with Jennifer over the past months. And with horrifying clarity, I saw the pattern. The constant corrections, the implication that my way was better, the refusal to acknowledge that Jennifer might know what she was doing. I was my mother-in-law. I had become the very thing I swore I would never be. I said, "Oh God, Carol, what have I done?" Carol said, "You can fix this, but you have to be willing to change, really change, not just apologize and then go back to the same behavior." I said, "How do I do that?" Carol said, "Start by giving her space, and when you do see her, listen more than you talk. Ask questions instead of giving advice. And most importantly, trust that she knows what she is doing." I said, "But what if she makes mistakes?" Carol said, "Then she makes mistakes. That is how we all learn. You made plenty of mistakes with Marcus, and he turned out fine, did he not?" I said, "I guess so." Carol said, "So give Jennifer the same grace you wish someone had given you." After we hung up, I sat in my living room for hours, just thinking. I thought about all the years I spent raising Marcus alone, feeling judged by everyone around me. The other mothers at the playground who whispered about the single mom who did not know what she was doing. The teachers who questioned my parenting choices. My ex-mother-in-law who never missed an opportunity to tell me I was failing. And here I was doing the exact same thing to Jennifer. Making her feel judged, making her feel inadequate, making her feel like she could not do anything right. I felt sick with shame. The next morning, I called Marcus. I said, "I need to apologize to Jennifer." "Can we talk? All three of us?" Marcus said. "I think that would be good, Mom. Jennifer has been really upset." I said, "I know. And I am sorry. I am so, so sorry." Marcus said, "Come over tonight, after Olivia goes to bed. We will talk then." I spent the entire day rehearsing what I would say. I wrote it down, crossed it out, wrote it again. I wanted to get this right. I needed to get this right. Because if I did not, I might lose them forever. When I arrived that evening, the house felt different. Colder somehow. Marcus let me in, and we all sat in the living room. Jennifer sat on the couch, her arms crossed, her face guarded. Marcus sat next to her, his hand on her knee. And I sat in the chair across from them, feeling like I was on trial. I took a deep breath. I said, "Jennifer, I owe you an apology. A real one. Not just words, but a commitment to change." Jennifer did not say anything. She just watched me, waiting. I said, "I have been overbearing. I have been critical. I have been treating you like you do not know how to take care of your own daughter, and I am so sorry. You were right to ask me to leave. You were right about all of it." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears, but she still did not speak. I said, "My own mother-in-law did the same thing to me when Marcus was a baby. She made me feel like I was failing every single day, and I promised myself I would never do that to anyone else. But I broke that promise. I became her, and I hate that." Marcus said, "Mom, we know you were trying to help." I said, "But that is the problem. I was trying to help in the way I thought was best, without considering what Jennifer actually needed. I was making it about me, not about her." Jennifer finally spoke. She said, "Do you know what is the hardest part?" I said, "What?" Jennifer said, "Every time you correct me, every time you suggest I do something differently, it makes me doubt myself. I start thinking maybe I am doing it wrong. Maybe I am not good enough. And then I feel angry because I know I am trying my best. But your constant feedback makes me feel like my best is not enough." I felt tears streaming down my face. I said, "Jennifer, you are an amazing mother. Olivia is lucky to have you. And I should have been telling you that every single day instead of criticizing you." Jennifer said, "I do not need you to be perfect. I just need you to respect me." I said, "I know. And I promise you, from now on, I will. I will call before coming over. I will ask before giving advice. I will support you instead of correcting you. And if I slip up, please tell me. Because I really do want to do better." Jennifer wiped her eyes. She said, "I want you in our lives, Patricia. I want Olivia to know her grandmother. But I need boundaries. I said, "Tell me what you need. Whatever it is, I will do it." We spent the next hour talking. Really talking. Jennifer told me all the ways my behavior had hurt her. She was honest, painfully so, and every word felt like a knife. But I listened. I did not defend myself. I did not make excuses. I just listened. And then she told me what she needed. Regular but scheduled visits. Permission before offering advice. Trust in her decisions, even when they differed from mine. Space to make mistakes and learn from them. I agreed to everything. Because losing them was not an option. As I drove home that night, I felt exhausted but also hopeful. We had a long way to go. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. But at least now we had a path forward. At least now I understood what I needed to do. The next few weeks were some of the hardest of my life. I wanted to call Jennifer every day, but I did not. I wanted to drop by with gifts and food, but I waited for an invitation. When Marcus would send me photos of Olivia, I would respond with simple messages of love, not critiques or suggestions. It was agony. The silence between us felt enormous, but I knew this was what Jennifer needed, so I gave it to her. Then, 2 weeks after our conversation, Jennifer called me. Jennifer said, "Hi, Patricia. I was wondering if you would like to come over for lunch this Saturday. Just the three of us and Olivia." My heart leaped. I said, "I would love that." "What time?" Jennifer said, "Noon? And Patricia, could you bring that pasta salad you make? The one with the cherry tomatoes?" I said, "Of course. I will see you Saturday." When Saturday came, I arrived with the pasta salad and nothing else. No unsolicited baby items. No parenting books I thought Jennifer should read. Just the food she requested and an open heart. The afternoon was lovely. We ate lunch on their back patio while Olivia played on a blanket nearby. We talked about Jennifer's work, about Marcus's latest project, about the weather and our favorite TV shows. We did not talk about parenting or babies or sleep schedules. We just talked like normal people who enjoyed each other's company. And it felt good. It felt right. It felt like the beginning of something new. As I was leaving, Jennifer hugged me. She said, "Thank you for respecting my boundaries. It means a lot." I said, "Thank you for giving me another chance." Jennifer said, "You are family. Family deserves second chances." Those visits became regular. Once a week, then twice. Sometimes at their house, sometimes at mine. And slowly, gradually, our relationship began to heal. I learned to ask instead of tell, to suggest instead of insist, to trust instead of control. There were still moments when I wanted to revert to old habits. When I saw Jennifer do something I thought was wrong and had to physically bite my tongue to keep from commenting. But I reminded myself of the pain I had caused, of how close I had come to losing everything, and I stayed quiet. And you know what I discovered? Most of the time, Jennifer figured things out on her own. The problems I worried about solved themselves. The mistakes I feared she would make either did not happen or were not as serious as I imagined. She was capable. She was smart. She was a good mother. And all she had ever needed from me was support, not instruction. Jennifer stopped trying with the pacifier. She stood up, put Olivia in her swing, and left the room without another word. There was the morning I arrived to find Jennifer dressed in actual clothes, not pajamas, with makeup on her face. I said, "Oh, you look nice. Are you going somewhere?" Jennifer said, "I have a doctor's appointment. My 6-week checkup." I said, "Do you want me to come with you? I can watch Olivia in the waiting room." Jennifer said, "Marcus is taking me. His mom is watching Olivia." I felt a sting of hurt. I said, "I am his mom." Then came the day that broke everything wide open. I arrived at their house on a Thursday afternoon. I had brought groceries and planned to make dinner. When I walked in, I found Jennifer pacing the living room with a screaming Olivia in her arms. She looked absolutely frazzled, her hair a mess, her eyes red from crying. I said, "Oh no, what is wrong?" Jennifer said, "She will not stop crying. I have fed her, changed her, burped her. I have tried everything." I held out my arms. I said, "Here, let me try." Jennifer hesitated, then handed Olivia over. The baby was wailing, her little face scrunched up and red. I started bouncing her gently, the way I used to do with Marcus. I hummed a soft tune. And slowly, gradually, Olivia started to calm down. Within 5 minutes, she was quiet. Within 10, she was asleep. I looked up at Jennifer with what I thought was a reassuring smile. I said, "Sometimes babies just need a different touch." But Jennifer was not smiling. She was crying. Big, silent tears running down her face. I said, "Honey, what is it?" Jennifer said, "I cannot do this." I said, "Of course you can. You are just tired." Jennifer said, "No. You do not understand. Every time you come over, you make me feel like I am failing, like I am not good enough." I said, "That is ridiculous. I am just trying to help." Jennifer said, "But you always do it better. You always know what to do, and every time you swoop in and fix everything, it makes me feel like a terrible mother." I said, "You are not a terrible mother." Jennifer said, "Then why do you keep treating me like I need to be taught how to take care of my own child?" I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Because somewhere deep down, I knew she was right. I had been treating her like a student, not a partner. Like someone who needed to be corrected, not supported. I said, "I am sorry." I did not realize. Jennifer wiped her eyes. She said, "Patricia, I appreciate everything you have done. I really do. But I need to figure this out on my own. I need to make my own mistakes and find my own way. And I need you to trust that I can do that." I said, "I do trust you." Jennifer said, "Then you need to show it. Because right now, it feels like you think I am incompetent." I looked down at sleeping Olivia in my arms. She was so peaceful, so perfect. And I realized that I had been holding on too tight, not just to her, but to the idea of what being a grandmother should look like. I had been so focused on being helpful that I forgot to ask if my help was actually wanted. I said, "You are right. I have been overbearing. I have been inserting myself where I should not, and I am truly sorry." Jennifer said, "I do not want you to stop coming over. I do not want you out of our lives. I just need some boundaries." I said, "What do you need from me?" Jennifer took a deep breath. She said, "I need you to call before you come over. I need you to ask before you give advice. I need you to respect that I am Olivia's mother, and even if I do things differently than you did, that does not mean I am doing them wrong. It all made perfect sense. But it also hurt. Because accepting those boundaries meant accepting that I was not as needed as I thought I was. It meant stepping back, letting go, trusting that Jennifer could handle things without me constantly hovering. I said, "Okay, I can do that." Jennifer said, "Really?" I said, "Really, I promise." We stood there for a moment, the air between us finally starting to clear. Then I carefully transferred Olivia back into Jennifer's arms. The baby stirred, but did not wake. Jennifer held her close, and I saw something in her face that I had been too blind to see before. She was not struggling because she was incapable. She was struggling because she was learning, just like I had learned, just like every new mother learns. I left their house that day feeling like I had lost something important, but I also felt lighter somehow, like I had been carrying a weight I did not need to carry anymore. For the next few weeks, I did exactly what Jennifer asked. I called before coming over. I asked permission before offering suggestions. I bit my tongue 100 times when I wanted to tell her she was doing something wrong. And slowly, our relationship started to heal. But then something else happened that tested everything I had promised. It was a Saturday morning. Marcus called me, and his voice was tight with stress. Marcus said, "Mom, we need your help." I said, "What is wrong?" Marcus said, "Jennifer's mother had a stroke last night. She is in the hospital. We need to fly to Ohio right away, but we cannot take Olivia. She is too young, and with everything going on at the hospital, it would be too chaotic. Could you watch her for a few days?" I said, "Of course. Absolutely. When do you need me?" Marcus said, "Our flight leaves in 3 hours. Can you come now?" I said, "I will be there in 20 minutes. When I arrived, Jennifer was throwing clothes into a suitcase, her hands shaking. She looked up when I walked in, her eyes filled with fear and gratitude. Jennifer said, "Thank you for doing this. I know it is sudden." I said, "Do not even think about it. Olivia will be fine. You just focus on your mom." Marcus brought Olivia downstairs, already dressed and fed. He handed me a list of instructions: feeding times, nap schedule, bath routine, emergency contacts. Marcus said, "She has been a little fussy lately. Might be teething. There is some gel in the medicine cabinet if she seems uncomfortable." I said, "Got it. Do not worry about anything here. Just take care of your family." They left in a flurry of hugs and last-minute instructions. And then it was just me and Olivia. The first day was fine. I followed the schedule Marcus had written out. Fed her at the right times, put her down for naps when she seemed tired, played with her toys the way I had seen Jennifer do. Olivia was a little cranky, but nothing I could not handle. But on the second day, everything fell apart. Olivia woke up screaming at 6 in the morning. Not her normal cry, but a desperate, inconsolable wail that sent my heart racing. I picked her up, checked her diaper, tried to feed her. Nothing worked. She just kept crying. By 8 in the morning, I was exhausted. By 10, I was worried. By noon, I was starting to panic. I called Marcus, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried Jennifer. Same thing. They were probably at the hospital, phones turned off. I considered taking Olivia to urgent care, but she did not have a fever. She was not throwing up, she was just miserable. And then I remembered something Jennifer had mentioned weeks ago. Something about Olivia having reflux, about certain positions helping her feel better after eating. I had not paid much attention at the time because I was too focused on offering my own advice about feeding schedules and burping techniques. I tried to remember exactly what Jennifer had said, but the details were fuzzy, so I did what I should have done from the beginning. I called her. This time Jennifer picked up. Jennifer said, "Patricia? Is everything okay?" I said, "Olivia will not stop crying. I have tried everything, but nothing is working. You mentioned something about reflux a while back. Can you tell me what to do?" There was a pause. Then Jennifer said, "Hold her upright after she eats, at least 20 minutes, and elevate her mattress a little when you put her down for naps. There are some wedges in the nursery closet." I said, "Okay, thank you." "How is your mom?" Jennifer said. "She is stable, conscious. It is going to be a long recovery, but the doctors think she will be okay." I said, "That is good. That is really good. Listen, I am so sorry for bothering you." Jennifer said, "You are not bothering me. She is my daughter. I want to know if something is wrong." I said, "I should have remembered what you told me about the reflux. I should have been paying better attention." Jennifer was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Patricia, you are doing great. I know Olivia can be tough sometimes. Just do what you can. She will be okay." Something in her voice made me want to cry. There was no judgment, no "I told you so," no resentment, just support, just trust. I said, "Thank you, Jennifer." "Really?" Jennifer said, "Call me anytime. Even if it is just to talk. I might not always answer right away, but I will get back to you as soon as I can." I said, "Okay. Take care of your mom. And do not worry about things here." After we hung up, I held Olivia upright just like Jennifer said. I found the wedges in the closet and elevated her mattress. And slowly, over the next hour, she calmed down. By the time I put her down for her afternoon nap, she was peaceful. I sat in the rocking chair in her nursery, watching her sleep, and felt something shift inside me. For months, I had been so sure I knew best. I had decades of experience, after all. I had raised a child on my own, navigated all the challenges, survived all the sleepless nights. Surely that meant I had wisdom to offer. But what I realized, sitting there in that quiet room, was that experience does not mean my way is the only way. It does not mean I have all the answers. And most importantly, it does not give me the right to impose my methods on someone else, especially someone who is doing her best to figure things out for herself. Jennifer was not failing. She was learning, and by constantly correcting her, by always swooping in to fix things, I was not helping her learn. I was just making her feel inadequate. Marcus and Jennifer came back 3 days later. Jennifer's mother was going to need months of physical therapy, but she was going to recover. When they walked through the door, I had Olivia in my arms, happy and calm. Jennifer rushed over and took her. She said, "Oh, I missed you so much." Olivia grabbed at her mother's hair, gurgling happily. Marcus put his arm around both of them, and for a moment, they were their own little unit, complete without me. And that was okay. Jennifer looked at me over Olivia's head. She said, Thank you, Patricia. For everything. I said. She was wonderful. We had a couple rough moments, but we figured it out. Jennifer said, The reflux? I said, Yes. Your advice really helped. I should have listened better when you told me about it before. Jennifer smiled. She said, You did great. Marcus said, How about I make us all some coffee? We can catch up while Olivia plays. We sat in the living room, drinking coffee and talking. They told me about the hospital, about Jennifer's mother's progress, about how scary it had been those first few hours. I told them about my days with Olivia, about the funny faces she made, about how she had started reaching for toys more deliberately. It was the most relaxed conversation we had had in months. No tension, no unspoken resentments, just family, supporting each other. As I was getting ready to leave, Jennifer pulled me aside. Jennifer said, Patricia, I want to talk to you about something. My stomach tightened. I said, Okay. Jennifer said, I know things have been difficult between us. I know I have been sensitive and probably harder on you than I needed to be. But I want you to know that I really do appreciate everything you do for us. And I am sorry if I made you feel unwelcome. I said, No, Jennifer. You were right. I was overbearing. I was not respecting your boundaries. You had every right to speak up. Jennifer said, Maybe we were both a little right and a little wrong, but I think we are figuring it out now. I said, I think so too. She hugged me then, a real hug, not one of those polite, obligatory ones. And I hugged her back, feeling years of tension dissolve. But our journey was not over yet. Because a few weeks later, the real test came. It was a Sunday afternoon. I had called ahead, asked if I could come over for a visit. Jennifer said yes, so I showed up with a homemade pie and a smile. When I walked in, I immediately noticed something was off. Jennifer looked frazzled again, dark circles under her eyes, her shoulders tight with stress. I said, Is everything okay? Jennifer said, I am fine. Just tired. Marcus was in the kitchen, looking equally exhausted. I said, What is going on? Marcus said, Olivia has not been sleeping. At all. We have been up every hour for the past week. We are running on fumes. I looked at Olivia, who was happily playing on her mat, completely oblivious to her parents' suffering. I said, Have you tried sleep training? Jennifer stiffened. She said, We are trying. It is just really hard. I said, What method are you using? Jennifer said, We are kind of doing a gentle approach. Lots of soothing. Lots of being there with her. I bit my tongue. I wanted to tell her that was not going to work, that she needed to let Olivia cry it out, that constant soothing was just creating bad habits. But I remembered my promise. I remembered the boundaries we had established, so instead I said, That sounds really tough. How can I help? Jennifer looked surprised. She said, What do you mean? I said, You both look exhausted. Why do not you let me watch Olivia for a few hours so you can get some rest? Or go on a date. Whatever you need. Marcus and Jennifer looked at each other. Then Marcus said, Are you sure? I said, Absolutely. You two go do something fun. Or just go sleep. I will be here. They did not need to be told twice. Within 20 minutes, they were out the door, and I was alone with Olivia. She was delightful that afternoon. We played peekaboo, read books, made silly faces at each other. When it was time for her nap, I followed the routine exactly as Jennifer had written it out. I sang the same song Jennifer sang. I laid her down in her crib just the way Jennifer did, and when Olivia started to fuss, I stood there, my hand on her back, resisting every instinct I had to pick her up and rock her to sleep. It took 20 minutes. 20 long, difficult minutes of listening to her cry while I just stood there, offering comfort with my presence, but not giving in to her demands. Every fiber of my being wanted to scoop her up. But this was not my method. This was Jennifer's. And if I truly respected Jennifer as a mother, I needed to trust her approach. Eventually, Olivia calmed down. She grabbed her blanket, stuck her thumb in her mouth, and drifted off to sleep. When Marcus and Jennifer came home 4 hours later, they looked like different people. Rested, relaxed, reconnected. Jennifer said, How did it go? I said, Great. She went down for her nap like a champ. Jennifer said, Really? How long did she cry? I said, about 20 minutes. But I did exactly what you do. I stayed with her, kept my hand on her back, did not pick her up. And she settled down. Jennifer looked at me with tears in her eyes. She said, "You followed my routine?" I said, "Of course. It is your routine. You know what works for her," Jennifer said, "but I thought you did not agree with my approach." I said, "It does not matter what I think. You are her mother. You get to decide how to raise her." Jennifer hugged me again. She said, "Thank you. You have no idea what that means to me." But I did know. I knew exactly what it meant. It meant I was finally seeing her as a capable, competent mother. It meant I was finally respecting her choices, even when they were different from mine. It meant I was finally being the mother-in-law I had always wanted to be. After that day, everything changed. Jennifer started calling me more often, asking for advice but feeling free to ignore it if she disagreed. I started asking her questions about her approach, genuinely curious about her perspective rather than just waiting for my turn to correct her. Marcus stopped walking on eggshells around us, no longer worried that every conversation would turn into a battle. We became a real family, not just in name, but in practice. One evening, about 6 months after that Sunday visit, Jennifer called me. Jennifer said, "Patricia, can you come over? I need to talk to you about something." My heart jumped. I said, "Is everything okay?" Jennifer said, "Yes, everything is fine. I just want to talk." When I arrived, Marcus was giving Olivia a bath upstairs. Jennifer sat me down in the living room with a cup of tea. Jennifer said, "I have been thinking a lot about our relationship, about how rocky things were at first and how much better they are now." I said, "We have come a long way." Jennifer said, "We have. And I wanted to tell you something. That day when you came over and I was exhausted, when you told me I was messing up Olivia's routine and I should leave, I was so angry." I frowned. I said, "Wait, what? I never said that." Jennifer looked confused. She said, "You did not?" I said, "No. You told me I was making you feel inadequate. You asked me to respect boundaries, but you never asked me to leave, and I certainly never told you that you were messing up any routine." Jennifer laughed, a surprised, relieved sound. She said, "I think I built that up in my head. I was so stressed and so convinced you thought I was a terrible mother that I imagined a confrontation that never happened." I said, "You are not a terrible mother. You are an amazing mother." Jennifer said, "I know that now. But at the time, I could not see it. And I think part of the reason things got so bad between us is because I was projecting my own insecurities onto you." I said, "And I was imposing my own ideas about how things should be done without considering what you needed." Jennifer said, "We were both learning." I said, "We still are." Jennifer said, "I want you to know that I really value your help now. Not just because you watch Olivia or bring us food, but because you respect me, you trust me. And that makes all the difference." I said, "You make it easy. You are such a good mom, Jennifer. I am proud to be Olivia's grandmother, but I am also proud to be your mother-in-law." Jennifer teared up. She said, "I am proud to be your daughter-in-law." We sat there for a moment, just smiling at each other, understanding passing between us without words. Then Marcus came downstairs with Olivia, who was wrapped in a towel and smelling like baby soap. Marcus said, "What are you two smiling about?" Jennifer said, "Just talking about how lucky we are." Marcus looked between us, clearly confused but also relieved. He said, "Well, that is good. Who wants to help me put the baby monster to bed?" I said, "I will help." We went upstairs together, the three of us plus Olivia. Marcus dried her off and put her in pajamas. Jennifer brushed her hair and sang her a song, and I just stood there watching, marveling at how they had created their own little world with their own routines and their own way of doing things. When Olivia was finally in her crib, eyes heavy with sleep, Jennifer turned to me. Jennifer said, "Want to read her the bedtime story?" It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. She was inviting me into their routine, not because she needed me to take over, but because she wanted me to be part of it. I picked up the book, sat in the rocking chair, and started to read. Olivia watched me with those big, curious eyes, and I felt my heart swell with more love than I knew what to do with. When I finished the story, I kissed her forehead and whispered, "Sweet dreams, little one. Grandma loves you." Then I stood up. gave Jennifer and Marcus each a hug, and left them to finish putting their daughter to bed. As I drove home that night, I thought about everything that had happened over the past year. The mistakes I made, the lessons I learned, the relationship I almost destroyed and then rebuilt. Being a grandmother, I realized, was not about being needed. It was about being trusted. It was not about having all the answers. It was about being willing to learn. It was not about taking over. It was about stepping back and letting the next generation find their own way. I had spent so much of my life being the one in charge. Raising Marcus alone meant I had to make all the decisions, handle all the crises, be both mother and father. And I was good at it. I was strong and capable and independent. But those same qualities that made me a good single mother were the qualities that made me a difficult mother-in-law. Because Jennifer did not need me to be strong and capable and independent. She already was those things. What she needed was support, respect, trust, and space to figure things out on her own. It took me a long time to understand that. Too long. But once I did, everything changed. The months passed. Olivia grew. She started crawling, then walking. She said her first word, which was not mama or dada, but something that sounded suspiciously like cookie. Jennifer went back to work part-time, juggling career and motherhood with a grace I deeply admired. Marcus got a promotion, which meant longer hours but also more financial security. And I kept showing up, but differently now. With boundaries, with respect, with trust. One day, when Olivia was about 15 months old, Jennifer called me in tears. Jennifer said, "Patricia, I need your help." I said, "What is wrong?" Jennifer said, "I just got a call from my boss. There is an emergency at work. A huge client is having a crisis, and I am the only one who can fix it. But Marcus is out of town at a conference, and my regular babysitter is sick. I know this is last minute, but could you possibly watch Olivia? It would just be for a few hours." I said, "Of course. I will be there in 15 minutes. Jennifer said, "Are you sure? I know you had plans today." I said, "My plans can wait. Family comes first." When I arrived, Jennifer was already dressed for work, her laptop bag slung over her shoulder. She handed me a list of instructions, then paused. Jennifer said, "Actually, you know what? You do not need this. You know Olivia's routine. You know what she likes. I trust you." She crumpled up the list and threw it in the trash. I said, "Are you sure?" Jennifer said, "I am sure. You are her grandmother. You have got this." Those words, so simple, so sincere, meant more to me than she could ever know. Jennifer kissed Olivia goodbye, then rushed out the door. And it was just me and my granddaughter, spending the afternoon together. We had a wonderful time. We played with blocks, read books, had a dance party in the living room. When it was time for lunch, I made Olivia her favorite meal. When she got fussy, I put her down for a nap. And when she woke up, we went to the park and fed the ducks. By the time Jennifer came home that evening, Olivia was happy, fed, and content. Jennifer scooped her up and covered her with kisses. Jennifer said, "How did it go?" I said, "Perfect. She was an angel." Jennifer said, "Thank you so much. You saved me today. I do not know what I would have done without you." I said, "That is what family is for." Jennifer said, "You are more than family. You are my partner in this. I could not do it without you." I felt tears prick my eyes. I said, "I feel the same way." We stood there for a moment, just smiling at each other. Then Olivia reached for me, her little arms outstretched, and I took her from Jennifer's arms. She snuggled against my chest, her head on my shoulder, and I felt a peace I had not felt in a long time. This, I realized, was what it was supposed to feel like. Not the constant power struggle, not the resentment and tension, but this: partnership, trust, love. As I drove home that night, I thought about how close I had come to ruining everything. How my need to be needed, my belief that I knew best, had almost destroyed the relationship I treasured most. But I also thought about how far we had come, how we had both learned and grown and changed. Motherhood, I realized, never really ends. It just evolves. And now, as a grandmother, I was learning a whole new way to love. Not by controlling or fixing or imposing, but by supporting and trusting and stepping back when needed. It was not always easy. There were still moments when I wanted to offer unsolicited advice. When I saw Jennifer do something I would have done differently and had to bite my tongue. But those moments were getting fewer and farther between. Because I was learning. And more importantly, I was learning to trust that Jennifer was learning too. One evening, about 2 years after Olivia was born, I was over at their house for dinner. Olivia was running around the living room, full of energy and personality. Marcus was at the grill outside, and Jennifer and I were in the kitchen, chopping vegetables and talking. Jennifer said, "You know, Patricia, I have been meaning to tell you something." I said, "What is that?" Jennifer said, "Do you remember when things were really bad between us? When I asked you to respect boundaries and you promised you would?" I said, "Of course I remember." Jennifer said, "I did not think you would actually do it. I thought you would try for a week or two, and then go back to the way things were. But you did not. You really changed, and I want you to know how much that meant to me." I set down my knife and looked at her. I said, "I almost lost you. I almost lost this whole family because I could not get out of my own way. Changing was not a choice. It was survival." Jennifer said, "But it was not just about survival, was it? You genuinely wanted to do better." I said, "I did. I do. Because you and Marcus and Olivia, you are my whole world. And I realized that if I wanted to be part of your world, I had to respect the way you live in it." Jennifer hugged me, and we stood there in the kitchen, holding each other while the vegetables waited, and Olivia's laughter echoed from the living room. Jennifer said, "I am so glad you are in our lives." I said, "Me too." That night, after dinner, we all sat in the living room together. Olivia crawled into my lap with a book, and I read to her while Marcus and Jennifer cleaned up. When I finished the story, Olivia looked up at me with those big brown eyes and said, "Gamma, I love you." My heart melted. I said, "I love you too, sweet girl. So much." She snuggled closer, her tiny hand clutching my shirt, and in that moment, I knew that all the hard lessons, all the mistakes, all the growing pains had been worth it. Because this, right here, was everything I had ever wanted. Not control, not validation, just love. Pure, unconditional, beautiful love. Jennifer came back into the living room and smiled at the sight of us. She said, "She adores you." I said, "The feeling is mutual." Marcus said, "You know, Mom, we have been talking, and we want to ask you something." I looked up, curious. I said, "What is it?" Marcus said, "We are thinking about having another baby, and when that happens, we would love your help. But on our terms. With boundaries. With respect. The way we have been doing things." Jennifer said, "We want you to be part of their lives, Patricia, an active, involved part. But we also need to be able to do this our way." I felt a lump in my throat. I said, "I would not have it any other way." Marcus said, "So you are okay with that?" I said, "I am more than okay with it. I am honored. And I promise, I will keep respecting your boundaries. I will keep supporting you the way you need to be supported." Jennifer said, "We know you will. We trust you." Those words, so simple, so powerful, felt like the greatest gift I had ever received. 6 months later, Jennifer called me with news. She was pregnant. The baby was due in early spring, right around Olivia's 3rd birthday. And this time, everything would be different. Not because Jennifer had changed, but because I had. The pregnancy was harder than the first one. Jennifer had terrible morning sickness that lasted well into her 2nd trimester. She was exhausted all the time, trying to work and take care of a toddler while growing another human being. And this time, when she needed help, she felt comfortable asking for it. Jennifer would call me and say, "Patricia, I am so tired today. Could you possibly take Olivia to the park for a couple hours so I can rest?" And I would say, "Of course, I will be there in 20 minutes. Or she would say, "I am craving that chicken soup you make. Do you think you could bring some by?" And I would make a huge pot and deliver it without staying unless she invited me in. It was a completely different dynamic. She asked. I helped. No strings attached. No judgment. No unsolicited advice about pregnancy or childcare or anything else. Just support, freely given and gratefully received. Marcus pulled me aside one afternoon when I was dropping off groceries. He said, "Mom, I want to thank you." I said, "For what?" Marcus said, "For changing. For really listening to what Jennifer needed. You have no idea how much easier this pregnancy has been because she feels supported instead of judged." I said, "I should have done it right the first time." Marcus said, "But you did not. And then you learned. And you changed. That takes courage. I am proud of you." I hugged my son, feeling tears prick my eyes. I said, "I am just trying to be the mother and grandmother you both deserve." Marcus said, "You are. You really are." Baby Ethan was born on a rainy Tuesday in April. He came fast, too fast for me to make it to the hospital. But Jennifer called me from the recovery room, her voice tired but happy. Jennifer said, "Patricia, we want you to meet your grandson." I said, "I am on my way." When I walked into that hospital room and saw Jennifer holding that tiny baby boy, with Marcus beside her and Olivia sitting carefully on the bed, looking at her new brother, I felt overwhelming gratitude. Not just for the new life in front of me, but for the second chance I had been given. The chance to do this right. I walked over and looked down at Ethan. He was perfect. Dark hair like his father, button nose like his mother. I said, "He is beautiful." "Congratulations, you two," Jennifer said. "Do you want to hold him?" I said, "I would love to." She placed him in my arms, and I felt that familiar rush of love. But this time, it was different. This time, I was not thinking about all the ways I could help, all the advice I could offer, all the wisdom I could share. I was just present, just grateful, just loving. I stayed for about 30 minutes, admiring Ethan and playing with Olivia, who was very excited to tell me all about being a big sister. Then I said, "I'm going to head out so you all can rest. Call me if you need anything." Jennifer said, "Thank you for coming. It means so much to have you here." I said, "Thank you for including me." The first few months with Ethan were chaotic. 2 kids under 3 is no joke, and Jennifer and Marcus were stretched thin. But this time, I was actually helpful. I came over when invited. I took Olivia on special grandmother-granddaughter outings so Jennifer could focus on the baby. I made meals and delivered them quietly, not expecting to be invited in. I offered to watch both kids occasionally, but only when Jennifer specifically said she needed a break. And you know what? It worked. Our relationship was stronger than ever. Jennifer trusted me. She confided in me. She asked my opinion sometimes, and when she did not follow my advice, I supported her choices anyway. One afternoon, when Ethan was about 4 months old, Jennifer and I were sitting in her backyard while the kids napped. We were drinking iced tea and enjoying the rare moment of peace. Jennifer said, "Patricia, I need to tell you something." I said, "What is it?" Jennifer said, "Do you remember that first year with Olivia? How hard things were between us?" I said, "Of course." Jennifer said, "I was so angry at you. There were days when I did not want you to come over, days when I dreaded seeing your name pop up on my phone. And I felt guilty about it because you were just trying to help." I said, "You had every right to be angry. I was out of line." Jennifer said, "But here is the thing. Looking back now, I can see that you were struggling too. You had raised Marcus alone. You had given him everything. And then he got married and started a family, and you were trying to figure out where you fit in all of that." I felt tears welling up. I said, "That is exactly it. I felt like I was losing him. And I thought if I could just help enough, be useful enough, I would still have a place in his life." Jennifer said, "But you always had a place. You always will. You are his mother. You are our family. We just needed to figure out what that looked like." I said, "And we did. Eventually." Jennifer said, "We did. And I am so glad. Because I cannot imagine doing this without you now. You are not just Marcus's mother anymore. You are my friend, my partner, my support system." I reached over and squeezed her hand. I said, "You are all of those things to me too. And I am sorry it took me so long to get here." Jennifer said, "We both had to grow. That is what family does. We hurt each other sometimes. We make mistakes. But if we are lucky, we learn from them. We sat there in comfortable silence, watching the leaves rustle in the breeze, listening to the distant sound of a neighbor's lawnmower. And I thought about how far we had come, from that terrible afternoon when she asked me to leave to this moment of peace and understanding. It had not been easy. There were days when I wanted to give up, when I thought maybe it would be easier to just keep my distance permanently. But I had pushed through. I had done the hard work of changing myself, of examining my motivations, of learning to let go, and it had been worth it. Every difficult moment, every time I bit my tongue, every time I wanted to take over but stepped back instead. All of it had been worth it. As Olivia and Ethan grew, I became the grandmother I had always wanted to be. The one who showed up for school plays and soccer games. The one who baked cookies with them and read bedtime stories. The one who was always available when needed but never intrusive. The one who supported their parents' decisions, even when I disagreed. There was the time Marcus and Jennifer decided to move Olivia to a Montessori school, even though I thought traditional education was better. I kept my opinion to myself and instead asked Jennifer to tell me about Montessori philosophy so I could understand their choice. And you know what? The more I learned, the more I saw the benefits. Olivia thrived there. There was the time they decided to take a family vacation to the mountains instead of the beach, which I thought was a strange choice with young children. But I smiled and asked to see photos when they returned. And they came back with stories of hiking and exploring and quality family time that sounded absolutely perfect. There was the time Jennifer decided to go back to work full-time, and I worried about the kids being in daycare. But I supported her decision, helped with pickups when she needed it, and watched her become even more confident and fulfilled as she balanced motherhood and career. Each time I wanted to offer my opinion, I remembered that conversation in the hospital room. I remembered Jennifer's tears. I remembered how close I had come to losing them. And I chose trust over control. Years passed. Olivia started kindergarten, then first grade. Ethan went to preschool. Marcus got promoted. Jennifer launched a new project at work. And I was there for all of it, not as the director of their lives, but as a supporting character in their story. And that was exactly where I belonged. But life has a way of testing us, just when we think we have figured everything out. It happened on a Saturday morning in November. Olivia was 7 years old, Ethan was 4. I was at home making bread when my phone rang. It was Marcus, and his voice was tight with panic. Marcus said, "Mom, we need you. Right now." My heart dropped. I said, "What happened?" Marcus said, "Jennifer collapsed at the grocery store. They took her to the hospital in an ambulance. I am on my way there now, but the kids are with my neighbor and I need someone to get them. Can you?" I said, "I will be there in 10 minutes. "Which hospital are you going to?" He told me, and I could hear the fear in his voice. I said, "Marcus, she's going to be okay. Just get there safely. I will take care of the kids." I grabbed my purse and drove to his house faster than I probably should have. The neighbor, a kind woman named Susan, met me at the door with both children. Olivia looked scared. Ethan was crying. I knelt down in front of them. I said, "Hey, you two. Mommy was not feeling well, so Daddy took her to the doctor. But you are going to come stay with Grandma for a little while, okay?" Olivia said, "Is Mommy going to be okay?" I said, "The doctors are going to take very good care of her. And Daddy will call us as soon as he knows more. But right now we need to be brave. Can you do that for me?" Olivia nodded, trying to be strong. Ethan just clung to my leg. I thanked Susan, buckled the kids into my car, and drove to my house. On the way, my phone rang twice. I could not answer while driving with the children, but I saw it was Marcus both times. My stomach churned with worry. When we got to my house, I got the kids settled with snacks and a movie, then stepped into the kitchen to call Marcus back. Marcus said, "Mom, they are running tests. They think it might be her appendix, but they are not sure yet. She is in a lot of pain." I said, "Do you want me to come to the hospital? I can bring the kids." Marcus said, "No, keep them there. The emergency room is too chaotic. I will call you as soon as I know more." I said, "Marcus, she is going to be fine. Jennifer is strong." Marcus said, "I know. I hate seeing her like this. She is scared, Mom." I said, "I know, honey. But she has you. And she has the best doctors. And she has all of us supporting her. She is going to get through this." We hung up, and I went back to the living room. Olivia looked up at me with those big, worried eyes. She said, "Is Mommy okay?" I said, "Daddy just called. Mommy is at the hospital and the doctors are figuring out what is wrong. She is not feeling good, but they are taking care of her." Olivia said, "I want to see her." I said, "I know, sweetheart. But right now, we need to stay here and take care of things while Daddy stays with Mommy. We are the home team, okay?" Olivia thought about this. She said, "What does the home team do?" I said, "The home team makes sure everything is okay at home. We feed the pets, we keep the house running, and we stay positive. That is our job." Olivia nodded seriously. She said, "I can do that." I said, "I know you can. You are very brave." The rest of the day was a blur of phone calls and updates. Jennifer's appendix had ruptured. She needed emergency surgery. She would be okay, but she would need to stay in the hospital for several days, and then she would need weeks of recovery at home. Marcus called that evening after the surgery. He sounded exhausted but relieved. He said, "She made it through. She is in recovery now. They said the surgery went well." I said, "Thank God. When can we see her?" Marcus said, "Tomorrow, maybe. They want to make sure she is stable first. How are the kids?" I said, "They are okay. Worried, but okay. We are having a sleepover at Grandma's house tonight." Marcus said, "Thank you, Mom. I do not know what we would do without you." I said, "You do not have to thank me. This is what family does." That night, I made the kids dinner and gave them baths and tucked them into the spare bedroom that I always kept ready for their visits. Olivia wanted to sleep in the same bed as Ethan, which I allowed even though it meant neither of them would sleep well. Sometimes comfort matters more than good sleep. After they finally dozed off, I sat in my living room and cried. I cried from relief that Jennifer was going to be okay. I cried from worry about what the next few weeks would hold. And I cried from gratitude that I was here, that I had not ruined this relationship, that when my family needed me, I could be there for them. The next few days were intense. Marcus stayed at the hospital with Jennifer as much as possible. I kept the kids, taking them to school and picking them up, making meals, helping with homework, reading bedtime stories. We visited Jennifer in the hospital once she was stable enough for visitors, but the kids could only stay for short periods. Olivia was being incredibly mature for a 7-year-old, but I could see the stress wearing on her. One night, after I put Ethan to bed, she came into the kitchen where I was cleaning up. Olivia said, "Grandma, what if Mommy does not get better?" I dried my hands and sat down at the table. I said, "Come here, sweetheart." She climbed into my lap, even though she was really getting too big for it. I said, "The doctors say Mommy is going to be just fine. She had surgery to fix what was wrong, and now her body just needs time to heal." Olivia said, "But what if something else goes wrong?" I said, "I know you are scared. It is scary when someone we love is sick. But worrying about all the what-ifs does not help. What helps is focusing on what we can control. We can be here for Daddy. We can keep the house running. We can send Mommy love and positive thoughts. And we can trust the doctors." Olivia said, "How do you do that? How do you not worry?" I said, "Oh, honey, I do worry. I am worrying right now. But I also know that worrying does not change anything. So I try to put that energy into doing helpful things instead." Olivia leaned her head against my shoulder. She said, "You are really good at taking care of people." I said, "Well, I have had a lot of practice. I took care of your daddy when he was growing up. And now I get to take care of you and Ethan. It is what grandmas do." Olivia said, "I am glad you are here." I said, "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." Jennifer came home from the hospital 5 days after her surgery. She was weak and in pain, but so happy to be home. Marcus set her up in their bedroom with everything she needed within reach. And I continued to help with the kids, with meals, with running the household. But here is the thing. This time, I did not take over. I did not reorganize their kitchen or rearrange their pantry or suggest better ways to do things. I asked Jennifer what she needed. I asked Marcus how I could help. And I did exactly what they requested, nothing more and nothing less. One afternoon, about a week after Jennifer came home, she called me into her bedroom. She was sitting up against pillows, looking tired but better than she had. Jennifer said, "Patricia, can we talk?" I said, "Of course." "What is it?" Jennifer said, "I need to tell you something. When I was in the hospital, when I was scared and in pain and did not know what was going to happen, do you know what I kept thinking about?" I said, "What?" Jennifer said, "I kept thinking about how grateful I was that you were there for my kids. That Marcus did not have to worry about them because he knew they were with you. That they were safe and loved and taken care of." I felt tears prick my eyes. I said, "Of course they were. They are my grandchildren." Jennifer said, "But it is more than that. 7 years ago, I did not trust you to watch them for an afternoon without me worrying you would undermine my parenting. And now, when I really needed you, I did not think twice about leaving them with you for days. That is how much things have changed." I said, "You changed me, Jennifer. You taught me how to be a better grandmother, a better person." Jennifer said, "We changed each other. You taught me that asking for help is not a weakness, that accepting support does not mean I am failing, that family means showing up even when it is hard." I reached over and took her hand. I said, "I almost lost you. I almost lost all of this because I could not get out of my own way. And I will never stop being grateful that you gave me a second chance." Jennifer said, "You gave yourself a second chance. You did the hard work. You changed your behavior. Not everyone can do that." I said, "I had to." The alternative was unthinkable. We sat there for a moment, holding hands, understanding passing between us without words. Then Jennifer said, "Patricia, I need to ask you something." I said, "Anything." Jennifer said, "My recovery is going to take weeks, maybe months before I am back to normal. And Marcus has to go back to work next week. Would you be willing to stay here during the day to help with the kids and the house?" I know it is a lot to ask. I said, "Jennifer, it is not a lot to ask. It is an honor to ask. Of course I will be here." Jennifer said, "But we would need to figure out boundaries. I do not want you to feel like you have to take over everything." I said, "Tell me what you need. We will figure it out together." We spent the next hour talking through logistics, when I would arrive, what tasks she wanted help with, what she wanted to handle herself, how we would communicate about changes or issues. It was collaborative, respectful, clear. This, I thought, was what partnership looked like. For the next 2 months, I spent my days at Marcus and Jennifer's house. I took the kids to school and picked them up. I made meals and did laundry and kept the house running. But I also made sure Jennifer still felt like it was her home, her family, her decisions. Every morning, I would arrive and ask Jennifer what she needed that day. Some days she wanted me to take care of everything so she could rest. Other days she felt stronger and wanted to be more involved, and I would step back and let her. We found a rhythm, a partnership, a way of coexisting that honored both her need for control and her need for help. And you know what? It worked. Better than I ever could have imagined. By the time Jennifer was fully recovered, something had shifted between us. We were not just family anymore. We were real friends. The kind of friends who could be honest with each other, who could ask for help without shame, who could offer support without judgment. One evening, after Jennifer was back to her normal activities and I had returned to my regular visiting schedule, she and I were sitting on her back porch while the kids played in the yard. Jennifer said, "You know what I realized during my recovery?" I said, "What?" Jennifer said, "I realized that the relationship we have now is exactly what I needed all along. I did not need you to take over. I did not need you to have all the answers. I just needed you to be present, to support me, to trust me. And that is exactly what you did." I said, "It took me too long to figure that out." Jennifer said, "But you did figure it out. That is what matters." I said, "I was so afraid of not being needed, of becoming irrelevant in Marcus's life. And I thought the only way to stay relevant was to be indispensable, to be the one who knew everything and could fix everything." Jennifer said, "But you are needed, just not in the way you thought. We need your love, your support, your presence. That is worth so much more than any advice you could ever give." I said, "I wish I had understood that from the beginning." Jennifer said, "We all learn at our own pace. The important thing is that you learned." We sat there in comfortable silence, watching Marcus play tag with the kids, their laughter filling the cool evening air. And I thought about how grateful I was for second chances, for the opportunity to do better, for the grace to change. As I held Olivia that evening, watching her eyes grow heavy with sleep, I thought about everything I had learned, about letting go, about trusting, about respecting other people's choices even when they are different from your own, and about the fact that love does not mean control. Love means support. Love means showing up, but not taking over. Love means being there, but knowing when to step back. I had spent so much of my life being the strong one, the one in charge, the one with all the answers. But now I was learning to be something different, something better. I was learning to be a partner, a support system, a grandmother who trusted her daughter-in-law to know what was best for her own child. And you know what? It felt good. It felt right. It felt like the person I had always wanted to be, but did not know how to become until life forced me to learn. When I finally left that night, I hugged Marcus and Jennifer goodbye. I kissed Olivia's sleeping head, and I walked out into the cool evening air feeling lighter than I had in years. Because I had learned the most important lesson of all. Being needed is not the same as being loved. And sometimes, the greatest gift you can give someone is not your help, but your trust. My daughter-in-law never told me I was messing up the baby's routine and asked me to leave. But I told myself that I was. Every time I offered unsolicited advice. Every time I reorganized her house without asking. Every time I made her feel like she was not good enough. I was messing up the most important routine of all. The routine of respect. The routine of boundaries. The routine of trust. And when I finally figured that out, when I finally learned to step back and let her be the mother she was meant to be, my response was not something that left her speechless. It was something that left us both grateful. Grateful for the hard conversations, grateful for the boundaries, grateful for the second chance to build a relationship based on respect instead of control. That is the real story, not a dramatic confrontation, not a clever comeback. Just two women learning to love each other, to trust each other, and to build a family together. One boundary at a time. One conversation at a time. One moment of grace at a time. And in the end, that is all any of us can do. Learn, grow, change, and hope that the people we love will give us the chance to do better. I am Patricia. I am a mother. I am a grandmother. And I am still learning what it means to love without controlling, to help without imposing, and to be present without taking over. It is the hardest lesson I have ever had to learn. But it is also the most important. Because without it, I would have lost the family I worked so hard to protect. And now, because of it, I have gained something even better. A partnership. A friendship. A love that is built on mutual respect and trust. That is worth more than being right. It is worth more than being needed. It is worth everything.